So, hello everyone, and welcome to the Extreme Improv Podcast. My name is David Pustansky, and we're here today for another exciting episode with a special guest all the way from New York City, Queens, New York, is Deirdre. And how would you pronounce your last name? I forgot to ask that as well, just before we began.
Oh, that's pronounced Verdolino.
Verdolino. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we did just say before we began that I asked, was your name pronounced Deirdre, because we have a name in the UK which is Deirdre, and you corrected me that it's Deirdre, and then I didn't even check on your surname. So, so Deirdre, you've been doing improv for about 20 years. What first got you into doing improv?
Well, I think I first started out doing stand-up in the mean clubs of New York City, and I took a stand-up class, and it's all about what you writing stuff. So I would get on stage and do various clubs, and you'd have to have bringers. And then I realized, it's kind of lonely up there, and I've seen improvisers. I saw improvisers shows, and I said, this looks like a lot of fun. So I started taking classes in Manhattan, and pretty much steadily around that time, various teachers, and then eventually you'd do a workshop, and then you'd perform. So that's how it started. And one of my teachers, his name is Todd Stashwick. He's actually out in Los Angeles. He's doing pretty well for himself. He has a pretty good TV and film career. So good for him.
Yeah, no, good for him. And obviously, that's great if you've got a teacher that's shows that they can be successful. So it gives you something to think that they obviously know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, and you said that you'd done stand-up comedy before this. Is that something you still do? How long did you do that for before, or what even led you to that? Because comedy is a big thing that we're interested in as well.
Well, I think that since I was a youngster, 7, 8 years old, I was very interested in talk show hosts and comedy and Saturday Night Live, which actually last night there was a fantastic show with Will Ferrell. They're having a bit of a rejuvenation, but I used to watch it pretty religiously, and I was allowed to stay up late to watch it. And I began to mimic stand-ups and imitate memorize their stand-ups and do them. And me and my brother would probably write our own sketches and things, in the basement of the house and perform little shows. So I think entertainment was definitely in my family. And then when I started working down in Wall Street, and I was part of this culture in the late 90s, and I was kind of like, well, here I am. I'm near all these places, and I have opportunities to do open mics or take these classes, and I just want to do it. I want to get up there and see what it feels like, because I think I could do it. I think I'm funny. And I started that way. So I think it starts from a very young age of appreciating the Johnny Carsons and the old school type talk show hosts, So that's where it started.
Yeah, fantastic. And do you still do stand up?
I still do stand up. I do some of the stuff in New Jersey, believe it or not. Some of the New Jersey clubs, which are it's a little less competitive. You don't get heckled. You don't get the
certainly
try to get their big break. It's a little bit of a smaller pond, so that way I can feel very a little bit more confident, in terms of that kind of feeling of being in the New York clubs where it's really tough and there's a lot of competition, as I said. But
I mean, that's something even because obviously I'm in the UK. That's something I'm aware of as well. So that's something that has come all this distance. That is an area that's going to be very competitive. Stand up, and you're going to get heckled, and it can be quite dog eat dog, as the expression goes.
By comics. I remember being heckled by comics. One experience I had, I was trying to do a bit where I was imitating a dolphin, and I had a beach ball with me on stage, and it was part of the act where I would just toss it to the audience after my silly imitation. And at one particular experience at a club, stand up in New York, the beach ball knocked over a glass of wine onto
oh dear,
a fancy elite type girl under her cashmere sweater, and the club said, well, you either got to pay for the cleaning for the girl's cashmere sweater, or you can't perform her anymore. I said, well, okay, I won't perform her anymore, which is no big deal. But then literally 2 years later, they didn't remember me, and I performed there again. But it's kind of like that kind of scene, but it's really very monetarily based. Like, it's all about bringing people. You got to bring like 4 people, and there's a cover charge, and it's very expensive nowadays to see comedy in New York. But so that's why I kind of moved my environment to a place where there's less of that attitude, where it's a little more relaxed. And I also started taking improv classes. There's a big new school here that started up in a town called Asbury Park, which has kind of world fame for bringing artists into the world. And they have some really great teachers down here, and I'm hoping to get into that troupe eventually. But it is very cliquey,
Yes, absolutely.
Improv is very cliquey, and it's not really catered to having like a 50-50 improv group, men, women. It seems to be more male based. So sometimes it's hard to get in because of that factor. I find it interesting that you'll see like 4 improvisers and one of them is a female on stage.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
So luckily this improv teacher I have now, who I believe is the best improv teacher I ever had, is a female, and she's done work.
Okay, out of interest, what is her name, if you want to, if you don't mind giving her a shout out?
Sure, Ria Torricelli, and she's running this group called Comedy Sports.
Yeah. At
the Sure Thing Theater, and the Sure Thing Theater is just a big building with a lot of artists community getting together. It's pretty cool, and so Comedy Sports is also a group that way back in the day I remember would perform on like the Upper West Side of New York. So it seems to be sort of this franchise thing.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It does. We even have Comedy Sports teams in the UK. We do. Yeah. Oh, wow. And I was in Seattle earlier in the year, and I was able to join in with a comedy sports show out there. Yeah, that was very cool. It's a fun format for the show.
Yeah,
the competitive side of it.
Yeah. It makes it more like you're rooting for a team or whatnot. The stakes are a little higher.
Yeah, certainly. Okay, let me just ask. So, if you've been doing improv, like going back 20 years, have you noticed any changes in, if you say that there might be 4 improvisers and 1 is female, is that still, is it always been the same, or have you seen any changes or progress in that regard?
It seems as though that has not changed very much. And I'm not sure if it's that women aren't as interested in improv, I haven't seen too many groups where you see like I said, like an equal population in the group. But I don't know what that's about. I don't know if that's just describes the draw. But then if you look at like, Chicago City Limits or the Groundlings in Los Angeles, I think they're a little bit more fair, I guess you'd say. But
yeah. And have you come across any like all-female groups where like out where you are? Because we do have quite a few of those in the UK.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, maybe I should go there.
Maybe.
Well, what I've seen is like I'll see like it's partially sketch but partially improv. There'll be like a 2-woman team who'll do like a sketch thing and work off the audience. I think that's pretty fun. I did something like that. I had a female partner, and we did like a sketch thing, 2 of us on stage. Most of it was scripted, but occasionally improvise some stuff. And I actually, if you want to look on YouTube, I was on the Howard Stern show.
That sounds exciting.
2002, long time ago.
Okay, so what were you doing?
Yeah. Sorry.
So what happened on the show? Give us.
Yeah. Okay. It was really fascinating. I mean, I've listened to Stern for a very long time, since I'm like 15 years old. And so one morning, I remember I was listening to the radio, and he was saying we have a call for people who could come on the show and sing a song, because Simon Cowell was going to stop in and do a little like American Idol style
American
judging.
Idol. Yep.
Yes, and this is when he was at his meanest,
Yes,
so
absolutely.
I called, and I had a comedy song called Slimy Hiney. Yes, it's on the blue side. But and they said, "Can you come in tomorrow?" I was like, "Okay." So basically the next morning at like 5:30 in the morning, drove to New York City, and I got on the air, and I had to improvise my song because the guitar that someone lent me was out of tune. It was a mess. So it wasn't my highest moment, my best moment, but I get Howard Stern to laugh, and it was on the E channel. It was broadcast on at that time. We had a TV show. So Simon Cowell just said, "I don't think you're funny," and I said, "Well, I didn't get to the funny part yet," and I think I might have trolled him a little bit about being late to the show, and Howard Stern just said, "Get off my chair," or something like that. But it was kind of a thrill to be in that.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, it was kind of a thrill. Not to be, to see what you've heard on the radio for so many years, and then you go there, it's nothing what you expect. And Howard Stern looked about as vulnerable and insecure as I felt that moment. It was very interesting to see.
Yeah, it's interesting when you get these big personalities that you kind of build up a picture in your mind of what they're going to be like, but they're people too.
Exactly. And he was just sitting behind the mic, hiding, and Robin, his co-host, she was like in this booth, kind of like sequestered away. And overall, it was okay. But if I were to redo it, I would definitely, you look back and you say, "Geez, I should have done this differently." But hey,
absolutely.
You think about preparation, and I think at the time when I was doing stand-up, I half wrote my material and I half improvised it. Now I think if you're a stand-up, you really need to have a solid written base before you can.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I was playing I've done a little bit of stand-up. It's something I've sort of done the verse to like the story you've said, where I've started with improv and then I'm moving towards stand-up as well.
Oh yeah.
And earlier this year, at the start of this year, I was doing a stand-up gig at a it was fairly brutal audience.
Yeah.
And my plan going there was, well, I'm an improviser. I will improvise. I will respond to people. And the thing was, because I felt like my strength is going to be interacting with the audience and bouncing off of them, and they'll appreciate it because they'll know that I'm coming up with this stuff on the spot. I opened the floodgates for them to call out, and I within about 3 minutes, they were just eating me alive with.
Oh Lord.
With calling out, and it's not that they were enjoying what I was doing, but I just made it completely fair game to shout out at me. So that was something I learned in that moment. That I should have definitely had this fully scripted, just because in a very heckler based show, I gave them permission to come in for the kill. Okay, so I take one of my questions that I was going to ask is, when it comes to improv, is do people lean towards comedy stuff or serious stuff? With your background in stand-up, I'm going to guess that you lean towards comedy. So if so, what kind of style would you say that your work is? What kind of stuff do you do? What do you like?
I think that I lean on a little bit of the alternative comedy style because I like to throw in black humor with my stuff. I like to get a little bit, if I can have subtext to my humor and try to bring it to a place where it's like, well, this is not necessarily funny, but it's a little weird. And I think if I go in that absurd direction, it seems to suit me well. It seems to go on that level. I mean, my song, my famous song was about adult diapers, for goodness sake, So I like to go in that realm that kind of crosses over maybe to the gross. Or I remember we did something in improv where we had to be in we had to have an environment, and I was in like a nursing home, and my belief system was kind of like, well, old people don't have any use for society, so we should just like burn them. So I mean, that could go
absolutely.
We should just go.
Sounds like a fair argument.
Yeah, So, and then the interesting part is when someone reacts in a way that is not suitable to your statement like that, then it kind of ruins it. You want them to really react naturally. You want them to be like, oh my God, that's terrible. To really react in an honest way for it to continue and to go to another level. Sometimes the
absolutely,
they don't always react in the way that you would expect. And that's one thing that the teacher said recently. She said, Deirdre just said that she said old people should be burned, and you're not reacting. You're just like, oh, So any normal person in a situation would be like, oh my God, what's wrong with you, So I like going that way.
But like one of the interesting things with improv and it being a skill, I suppose, is that even though it's improvised, you still can play to the principles of comedy. And usually, if you're doing comedy and you've got an outlandish character, you usually have the comic fool and then the straight man, as they call it.
Right.
So if you're saying burn the old people, and then the other person tries to top you of like, we can burn them with this or whatever, then you don't have the straight man aspect to it. So that's why if you get one person that's going the weird route, and then you're in a scene with them, I would probably lean towards, right, they're doing something weird. I could probably be the counterpoint to this, or the voice of reason. Yeah.
Right. And then an extreme person can continue building.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Okay,
you can't always been in your partner's head, I guess.
No, absolutely. And this is one of the things where, as you're performing it, you might think, well, I'm going to say this and it's going to be great. Yep. And then if they just say that, it'll be magic. And then they don't.
It doesn't always happen.
No, it doesn't always happen.
No, and I've disappointed others too, because they had like this framework they were trying to provide, and I just collapsed it. So but that's what's so beautiful. You could just keep doing it and stay in the moment and try to get to that point. And sometimes it does wind up to be a sublime moment. It's nice.
Yeah. Okay, so Deirdre, do you do short form improv, long form?
I've been focusing on the short program improv, but I think this one school is trying to get together musical improv teams where it's a lot of singing, and I'm trying to get more in that direction where you create like a mini play,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, and that I guess is long form.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so on the idea of musical improv, what's your approach to it? Because there's lots of musical improv groups, at least in the UK.
Yeah.
That they'll focus on really good singing, harmonies, and things like this. Okay. But the one thing I've noticed is that often the trick that they use, or the thing they sacrifice, is that their songs won't rhyme. Yeah, so what's your feelings on that?
I'm a big-time rhymer. I really believe in rhyming.
Me too.
I think it makes it good, and it really does jiggle your brain into action. So just go through the files of words that will match and will suit it. I mean, I think that's the great challenge, and I like the great challenge of that. And it's just more fun to have rhymes in songs. I'm actually working on a song now about Trump.
Yep.
I'll send you a link. But I think musical.
There's lots of good words that rhyme with Trump.
Oh yeah, big time. And I'm surprised they haven't called him President Chump yet. That hasn't really.
Yeah, that's true.
It seems to rhyme well,
Yeah, chump, dump. Hump. There's lots of good words there. Bump. Yeah.
So I'm trying to get parody out there. It doesn't seem like many artists these days are doing much Trump parody, and I think it needs to be done.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is the interesting thing, and like we don't have to get all political on this because it can be all lighthearted and everything. But obviously, Trump is very polarizing. But as a performer and as like an improviser, I've always felt like Trump has been a gift, just because he is wonderful when you have to do a scene and you can bring in Trump, or you have to do an impression or something. Yeah, there's just so much to work with.
Unreal amounts to work with, yes.
Yes, absolutely.
And then he gets so thin-skinned about being made fun of. It's like, well, you're providing a lot of fodder, so I don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe stop tweeting. I don't know.
You know what? The thing is, though, is it may be that he's secretly the smart one here. By being so sensitive, people tweet more, and he is always the biggest topic of conversation.
Right.
Okay, so if you like doing short form primarily, it's usually game based. What kind of improv games do you like doing? What are your favorites?
My favorites. We do a Jeopardy one where we get audience to say, I don't know if you have that show on in the UK.
We kind of aware of it. I think everyone basically, but it's not something it's not one of our shows, but because it's so famous, we know it anyway.
You know about it. Okay, so that's a lot of fun because then you could be a character. You can be like, contestant, some strange scuba diver person, and then you create your character, and then the audience gives you, the topics. So it's up to like the moderator to come up with the questions regarding the topic. So if it's like, cheese, then you get asked questions, and that's fun because you can be character, but you can answer in the way the character thinks of the world and their idea. I love underwater cheese. I don't know what's underwater cheese. That's
So just off the top of my head, so like Jeopardy is they'll give you the answer and you have to work out what the question is. Is that
right?
Is that how it works? Okay,
so you have to answer in the form of a question. So like It's interesting. Like say if like I said, if your character is based on, say they're like a magician, and the question is something about like another topic, potpourri. I don't know why potpourri always comes up in Jeopardy. Potpourri could be any question out there, and then so your answer, like I said, you have to frame it based on how your character sees the world in their own absurd, weird way, and then and whoever wins, like whoever gets the answer correct, again, is based on the moderator's choice. So that's fun. And then another one I enjoy is called the Oracle.
Is that where the person's got two heads?
Yeah. They sit in like chairs behind each other, and again, the audience will ask questions, either mind-bending questions or deep, profound questions, or just silly questions. And then each person gets a chance to give their answer. So kind of like a gypsy for a moment there.
That's cool. Okay, so just because often improv games have got different names, so on the Oracle, do they answer one word at a time? Is that the way you've played it?
Yes, exactly.
Yes, that's the one. Yeah.
How about that?
No, that's a cool game to play. Right. A good challenge, and I love ones where you can play with language like that.
Exactly, and the sentence can either go on forever. I've seen the answer be like one word. But that's a great thing you can do to play with people's expectations, where you can get quite a complex question, and then the answer can just be yes. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
okay. Oh no, go ahead, continue.
There's one called I don't know why they called Space Jam, but I always loved this one because even when I was in the audience, I would try to volunteer. So they start out with a song and someone's dancing on stage, and then when the song stops, they freeze and someone jumps on and does a scene with them. And then you're able to just tag people out and then continue the story. And the idea is to bring the story back around to like the beginning scene, create like, I guess, a mini story. It's more of a long, I guess that's more of a long form, but at the end they just play the song and the person winds up being the solo one dancing on stage yet again. So, yeah, and I also like genre games where there'll be like someone will say freeze, an improviser will say freeze, tag someone, and they'll have a genre like film noir or Disney, and then you have to do the scene based in
that style.
Yeah. That's challenging. And,
okay, so here's a question I've got based on that. Film noir, that's a genre that the audiences always love to suggest for you to do.
Yeah, they do.
And there's not actually that many film noir films, really, especially nowadays. And yet, it feels like it's a thing that almost entirely exists in improv shows nowadays.
Right, isn't that funny?
I don't get it. There are, because you get into. Okay, so one of the topics I was going to come to is the idea of suggestions that you get from the audience, and why do you think audiences want to see film noir yet we don't ever make or watch film noir films in reality?
That seems like one of the default settings, but I've seen that more in New York City, that they'll say that. But if you go to say like a Jersey-based place, it doesn't come up as much. And I don't know if it has to do with education or they want to challenge the improviser. It's very interesting, but maybe it has to do with the audience's level of sophistication, how they view what they want to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let me ask you a couple of questions. If I was to ask for a suggestion of a fictional character, what's the first two or three that come to your mind?
Okay, fictional. I would think of someone that owns a laundromat.
Okay, sorry. So a pre-existing one. A pre-existing fictional character. So if I ask for a fictional character that already exists,
all right, so
what ones jump to mind? Mickey Mouse?
I like Mickey Mouse. I like doing animated people in a live setting. That's interesting. So, like a Mickey Mouse character, or something on, say, like we have a channel here called Comedy Central, and there's a lot of late night strange animated series. So I'd say, okay, you're going to be the character from Robot Chicken.
Nice.
Could be a wrestler. I don't know.
Yeah.
Fictional. I like to. So a fictional, like someone who's in a movie or something that plays an odd character, like maybe Will Ferrell, the elf, as the elf.
Yeah. Okay.
So and I like doing men as a woman. I like playing male characters. I don't know what that's about, but
okay. I'll let's stick on that, and then we can come back to some other thoughts. Why do you think that is? What appeals to you on that?
That's very. I think back in the day when I used to write small sketches with my siblings, my brother was the one who was the most willing participant, and I seem to think that if we switch roles, it would be more funny for my parents to get a kick out of it. So I would play Han Solo and he'd be Princess Leia or something. That was
yeah.
So I think, and also my heroes, my comedy heroes, were mostly male. Most of the comics coming up. So
that was that's another of you're rattling through my questions, but let's go with it. We're on a roller coaster, and we'll keep it going. So, who are your comedy heroes, influences?
Okay, I love Norm Macdonald. He's extremely well read and astute individual, and his comedy, sometimes his old time long jokes with very almost bizarre punchlines. But he started out as a comic, then he did some SNL. He's on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, I was going to say he's not someone I'm familiar with.
Oh, okay. You might appreciate him. And then he went to do a show on Netflix. He did his own talk show, but he's had an interesting career. And Eddie Murphy, I used to memorize his bits. He had a huge hit with this comedy special, Raw.
Yes.
It's well known, So I know parts of that by heart still. And there's a kind of a small known comic. His name was Bob Nelson. That he was a brilliant guy. He wasn't huge, but he did a lot of characters, interesting characters, and characterizations that were very funny, impersonations. And for me, doing impersonations was a super joy. I think is just to be able to do that, to just inhabit a different person. And, I guess being a male character is even more different. So,
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you've done it again, Deirdre. That was something I was going to come to later.
Really?
I was going to ask you, and feel free to veto this. I was going to say, okay. Do you have any impressions that you always dip to? And if so, could we hear one? What's your best impression? What's your party trick if you have one? Feel free,
okay.
Feel free. You could go for your Dolphin, if the one you mentioned earlier.
Okay, so Bob Nelson, this comic Bob Nelson, I don't know where he's probably doing stand up. He did a routine about a football team, and it started out something like this. Okay. Hello, I love football. Football is my life. You could be playing football on a football field with a football. But I'm not here to talk about football. I'm talking about the United Way. The United Way is the Halloween disease. And wait a minute. So there was that, it was like a black dude, I guess.
Yeah, certainly.
And
no, it sounded something
like that.
Sounds
I like that character.
I like the rhythm of the speaking. I don't know the reference, so I'm gonna take your word that was a perfect impression.
Someone more known. I could do someone more known, but it might bore you a bit. But that's okay.
No. If you've got another one, but you don't. We won't make you. We won't be like Dance Monkey Dance, where you have to keep doing different stuff. But okay, so but I will ask, what was your Dolphin impression?
My Dolphin impression. So I made a headband with a Velcro thing on top, and I managed to get Velcro on the beach ball, so I would actually be able to balance this beach ball on my head with this contraption. I was a prop.
So was it a physical impression rather than a vocal one? Okay. I really wanted to get you to make dolphin sounds down the mic.
I could do it.
Well, you don't have to if it wasn't your trick, but
it was part of it. But like I said, it's traumatizing knocking over that bottle of that wine glass. But it was really just, I'm a dolphin. I'm going to play, knock this thing off my head and do, the dolphin sounds, which I probably could do it, but you have to give me a minute to get prepared. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was, and it was not a big deal. It was not particularly hilarious, but I think that I like to be able to get the audience involved, and I thought that the having this prop in the audience would become almost like a concert where they just start popping it around.
It sounds like a memorable bit because Yeah, when you've been to see like a a stand-up night, and there's lots of people doing different things, you'll remember the person that threw a beach ball into the audience. So
I was always trying to go for something original, and at one point, I was on some comedy website, and someone from Los Angeles, and I'm not sure, but I think it was Dave Becky, who happens to be, unfortunately, Louis C.K.'s comedy agent.
oh right.
So he's back in the day. I'm almost positive because he works for 3 Arts Entertainment. I sent out a VHS. That's how old this is, to him of one of my main stand-up acts, which is on YouTube too. And I remember him telling me that this is off base, but that I needed to create a persona. And at that time, I was just so wildly just doing bits that really didn't relate to, say, I'm a substitute teacher. This is my view of the world. I was just doing, one-liners and impersonations and things of that nature. In fact, now you're reminding me, I did an impersonation of my father, who was a combination of Frank Sinatra, Jackie Gleason, and Rob De Niro. So I did a bit.
Quite a combination.
Yeah, that's my dad. So it was kind of like this. Well, Deirdre, when you make the iced tea, you got to put the lemons in first. And so then I go to me and I say, what are you talking about, Dad? Oh, geez, why'd I have to have a meathead for a daughter? You're going to the moon, Deirdre. You're going to the moon. So, I mean, it was ridiculous. And by the way, I showed it to my dad, and he had no reaction. I showed him the tape.
Did he recognize? Did he recognize any of it? Yeah.
I think he did not know what to say, and he's like a total generation of I don't think humor was in his wheelhouse whatsoever growing up, but or under appreciating comics more than just Laurel and Hardy in his day,
Yeah.
But I think because I was so varied in my approach to comedy, so many different jokes, and you could actually see it on YouTube if anyone cares. But what I thought was my best stuff.
We'll make sure we get all the plugs in of where we can find stuff.
I know, no, I'm not trying to plug myself at all. But I mean,
oh no, you've got to.
Oh, thanks. So,
Always.
Yeah, so my best show, which I think is my best show, I remember a lot of my people from Wall Street, my Wall Street job came, because at that time that was great to be able to have bringers, because I worked in an office of 100 people. I mean, just picture the Wolf of Wall Street. That was kind of it was just a big, huge floor of cubicles. So I could just go and hand out flyers to everybody and say, come to my show. And I'd have endless, comers to the show. So they recorded that one, and that one is on tape. And that's when I actually did sing the Slimy Heiny song that eventually I sang on Howard Stern. But, they don't want that these days. It seems like they want a prepackaged thing. You're a father who has, pain in the ass kids. You're an angry guy from Boston. They do want one particular view on the world. And I just find that difficult just because I have so many varied interests myself. I teach music as well, and I wrote a couple books, so it's I just want to put out there my observations and impersonations, and I guess maybe I'll find that niche audience one day with this Trump song that I'll send to you, David, because I think you'll appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you keep sowing the seeds for us. Tell us a little bit about what are these books you've written?
All right, so the books I've written under a pseudonym. It's called The Confessions of a Bartender. So when I was living in New York, I actually moved to New Jersey for a little while after there was a big hurricane called Hurricane Sandy that caused a lot of havoc a couple of years ago. So when I moved to New Jersey to escape what was going to happen to South Queens, wait, what was the question?
The books.
The books. Okay, so when I came to New Jersey and I started living with my dad, I started working as a bartender at a local hotel over here where I live. So then I just started writing about my experiences working as a bartender, and the stories that happened and the people I met was really quite amazing. And plus I went through my own journey. So it's under the name Krista Parity, and it is on Amazon. So and then I followed it up with a second book, similar title, Obsession Confessions, which kind of it veered toward getting away from the bartending world trying out the online dating world. And so it's basically like a memoir of my experiences with some funny
Yeah,
stories.
certainly.
Yeah. So
And how long did it take to write those? And
wow.
yeah,
It took 3 years to write Confessions of a Bartender. Literally 3 years to just get all the stories compiled, and then then load it into Amazon. They figure it out for you. Basically, you just give them a cover and they put it on there for Kindle, and you make a price. So and so yeah, it took a long time. It did take a long time because it was happening in real time. The stories that I was writing in order to put into a book. And, I went through a health thing and health scare. I had issues with alcohol, and I just put it all in there,
wow.
So yeah, if I could get the wherewithal to, write into a screenplay, it might be a funky story.
Yeah, absolutely. Often these, like so many of these stories out there, especially if you do have experience, like so many people that do comedy, they'll do it in a way to help cope with other areas of their life.
Right, big time.
And
big time.
It's such a common thing. I literally could go as far as I probably would say that over 90% of people say I do comedy, but there's these other areas where aspects of my life where I do it because it helps me cope with this or that or the other. Right. Comedians and people that do improv are very interesting people.
Oh yeah. They are very interesting and unusual. It's probably difficult. That's why a lot of married couples who are comedians they don't last too long, because they both got such a plethora of things going on.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of need the non-comedian to help ground the comedian.
Yeah, you need the straight man. You need the person who's not
exactly. That's it.
Seeking attention, needs attention.
Okay, so next. Okay, in fact, I'm going to circle back. So I'd asked you about 5 minutes ago, or whatever it was, about fictional characters.
Yeah.
If I ask for 2 or 3 suggestions of non-fictional characters, who are the first people that pop into your mind? Non-fictional people.
Okay. Oh, that's hard.
Okay, so just imagine we're doing a show. You're in the audience. You're going to help me out because it may be a slightly dead audience, but as an improviser, we need to get those suggestions. Can I have a non-fictional character, a person from history, let's say? Who comes to your mind?
Okay, I don't know why I thought of who's the woman who was in the Halloween movies?
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Jamie Lee Curtis, because what's her deal? No one knows.
No one does.
Right, nobody knows her deal. If she's like a cool person, if she's a bitch.
I think she's got to be cool. She's got to be cool.
She's
sure.
Gotta be cool. She seems cool.
Yeah, I'd hope she'd be. Yeah, this is one of the things where you don't want to meet your heroes just in case she wasn't cool. But yeah, I love Jamie Lee Curtis movie. She was in Trade. Yeah, she was in Trading Places, the Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd comedy. One of my favorite films.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Have you ever seen it?
You know what? I think 25 years ago.
Oh, it's so good.
Is it good? I'll have to rewatch. Yes.
It's one of the ones that they always air here around Christmas time. It's got one scene, or it's got 1 or 2 scenes that are set at Christmas, and they always air it here.
Oh yeah, and we're big on Die Hard here in the States.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to take already that you do consider that Die Hard is a Christmas movie, just on that debate.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I don't understand why there would be the argument that it's not a Christmas movie.
Because of the violence? I don't know.
Well, it could be, but it's set at Christmas. It's a guy, he ends up with his family, he's reunited at Christmas, it snows at the end,
It has a happy ending.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much.
No, go ahead.
No, I was thinking, it is fun to do politicians, too. For non-fictional, like we were saying earlier, because there's usually a lot to make fun of. So
yeah, absolutely. It's just interesting. The reason why I ask these questions is it's just a little bit with these podcasts where if I'm speaking to people from different areas of the world to find out what the most common suggestions they come up against are, and perhaps I frame that in the wrong way, so you might be able to say what the most common suggestions you hear are, but it's usually good just to ask someone, who's a fictional character? And the first one you gave was Mickey Mouse, which I'd say that's not an uncommon one for us to hear in the UK.
Really?
Mickey Mouse is famous enough so that we hear it often. But the most frequent one we seem to get for a fictional character is Harry Potter.
Really?
And
okay.
And if we ask for a non-fictional character, we'll either have King Henry VIII or Hitler.
Oh.
So, you know.
I was going to say Abraham Lincoln at first, but I was like, that sounds so boring. Yeah.
Well, exactly. It's very common.
Yeah. It's in your culture's mind. Yeah. It's like, you know, what's...
It was interesting. Last year I did the San Francisco Improv Festival.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that was nice. And throughout our 30-minute show, there was 2 times where I asked the audience for like suggestions where they'd come up with like a fictional character.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I asked for a fictional character, I got Abraham Lincoln. And
oh, really?
I was like, oh, that's my favorite fictional character as well.
Is it really?
And well, he's not fictional.
No, he's not. Yeah.
So that was quite funny. And then later in the same show, we were doing impressions, and I asked for another fictional character, and we did get Donald Trump. Oh. And it kind of gave me the impression that all of your presidents were in fact fictional. So
imagine that.
Yeah, you know.
Well, maybe they need to be schooled on non-fiction.